loves, it's Katie, and I'm here today to do Josh's Bagel book tag, which is literally book questions centered around bagels. And I think that's really unique and interesting. But anyway, I was tagged by Linda from Linda's World of Books, and it's, as I said, kind of an interesting tag, so let's just launch right on in. Number 1, plain. A writer you feel does a great job with the same kind of work. Now, what I think this question ultimately means, or the way that I'm interpreting it, is, let's say you've read an author who wrote a fantasy series, and then you finished that one, and then you found out that they had another one, and then you read that one, and it was just as good as that one. So, if I'm interpreting it, the question right, that's kind of what I'm going with. And so the person that I'm going to pick is J.R.R. Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings, and I read The Hobbit, and they're generally kind of in the same whatever. And I really liked those, but then I also read The Silmarillion, and I really liked that as well. He's just phenomenal for the fantasy genre as a whole. And then there are his translation works, like Beowulf and The Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun, that are just as great. So yeah, definitely J.R.R. Tolkien. Number 2, everything. A writer in which you own every work. Dan Brown. I have all of his novels, not just the Robert Langdon series, which is what everyone knows, such as like Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons and things like that, but I have also his 2 standalone novels as well. I just really enjoyed reading all of his books. Picked some up abroad when I ran out of something to read. Something about his writing is just very easygoing and very easy to get into. Number 3, Sesame. Your favorite Sesame Street or Muppets book. And for this one, I'm changing it a little bit. I haven't read any Sesame Street or Muppets books in a very long time, and I'm too lazy to go look them up. So I'm just changing this question to who my favorite Sesame Street and Muppet characters are. And for the Sesame Street character, my favorite is Elmo, and for my favorite Muppet, it's Kermit. Number 4, Poppy. A short work that gives you an ecstatic high. For this, I'm picking Animal Farm by George Orwell. I absolutely loved everything about that book. I was on a high for like a solid week after I read that, because it was just so good and so thought-provoking and so interesting and just generally a really good time. And I just really enjoyed it. So yeah, I don't necessarily want to say it was an ecstatic high, but I was on some kind of a high. And so yeah, that's the one I'm picking. Number 5, Salt. A good book you had to put down in order to catch yourself. Just going to put a disclaimer, that is a large chunk of the books that I've read in the last several years, but the one I'm going to pick today is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Especially for the last chunk, I had to constantly put the book down to check my good old-fashioned sobbing tears. It was a good time. So yeah, I just needed to take a break and take a step away despite wanting to keep reading, just so I could absorb it all properly, I guess. Number 6, Garlic. A genre you just can't get enough of. Fantasy. If you guys have been here for any span of time, you know that fantasy is the main genre that I go for. I mean, I have other genres that I really enjoy as well, but fantasy is my main jam. Number 7, Onion. A book that may cause you to get stares, but you enjoy anyway. You know, the way that I read this question, it just kind of seems like, a book that's like a guilty pleasure that a lot of people would kind of give you weird looks for reading because, etc. But I don't necessarily have one of those. I'm reading a book because I enjoy it, not because, it's like a guilty pleasure or whatever. And even if it was, a lot of people might not have heard of it. So I don't know. I don't think I really have an answer for this question. Number 8, Cinnamon Raisin, a sweet but thought-provoking work. Now for this, I put The Giver because when I read it, I thought it was a very interesting read in that, it was just, it's a dystopian novel, but I found the ending to be very bittersweet and just made me have a lot of things to think about while reading it and then upon finishing it. So I think while it is generally a bittersweet book, a lot about the way that we perceive the world and, kind of what were to happen if only one person were given all of the memories and needed to use them kind of as an emergency kind of a situation. I don't know. I have a lot of interesting thoughts about that book, I think. Number 9, French Toast, a writer you are happy to have discovered this past year. Now, this is a little bit of a caveat because I didn't discover them this year. I first read a book by them this year, and that's Brandon Sanderson. I'd heard about Brandon Sanderson a lot over the past several years, but I first read his book this year, so I am counting him for this question. Number 10, Egg, a work of nonfiction that caused you to form or switch a position. And for this, I picked Just Mercy, a story of redemption and mercy by Bryan Stevenson. It reformed my idea of the incarceration system and death row in the United States, because while I thought one way kind of before, I never really thought about the other way, and it just changed my thought process and my feelings on the matter in a lot of different ways. I don't want to say it flipped me, but it definitely made me realize that we need to see things from different perspectives before we make that kind of a judgment call. It's a very, very interesting and thought-provoking read. I'd highly, highly recommend that you go and read it because it's very, very eye-opening. Number 11, Rainbow, an LGBTQIA+ work that made you think. Okay, so a lot of the LGBT books that I've read are very much, YA, contemporary, or new adult, and a lot of them were not super thought-provoking. Talk once again about a series that you guys know that it's gonna come, and that is The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb, because as you guys might have and probably have heard me talk about at length at this point, there is a lot of diversity in those books, whether it's in terms of like race, gender, sexuality, just Hobb really pushed the boundaries for when those books were written, kind of thing. A genderqueer prophet, as well as pretty sexuality fluid kind of a thing. And then there are several other like gay characters throughout. Got quite a bit of different kinds of representation in the books, and the reason I'm saying that this was really made me think is because of the way that it makes you think about love in just all forms, really. That series really makes you think in a lot of different ways because, as I said, she really does push the boundaries. But in terms of love and relationships that you have with any given person, those boundaries or those confining, constricting limits are really explored and pushed. And when you finally get into the books a little bit more, you'll understand what I mean when I say that thinking about love and sexuality and gender norms and all that stuff really, really gets tested. So I guess I'm just going to leave it there. I don't know if I explained that really well. Number 12. I think it's pronounced Bagel, which is a fairy tale you feel people need to read in its original form. Honestly, I think that if you can, you should read all of the fairy tales in their original form, because it just gives you a richer experience and gives you a little bit more knowledge about the time and the moral message that was being expressed and sent. I mean, Disney definitely sugarcoats fairy tales to an extreme, and I really think reading it in its original form gives you a better perspective, and as I said, gives you the deeper message that you're ultimately supposed to get out of the fairy tale. Number 13, what is your favorite kind of bagel, as well as your favorite bagel condiment? I really like sesame seed bagels with chive cream cheese. It's a really good time. I am a fan, but it has to be toasted. So toasted sesame seed bagel with chive cream cheese. And 14, bagel tray. Who do you tag? You know, I don't know if I'm going to really tag anyone because I don't know who's done this and who hasn't. I don't know how long this has been around. But if you see this and you think it looks kind of cool or interesting, definitely feel free to give it a go and just let me know down in the comments or on social media if you've done it or not. And I'll come watch. So you guys know the drill. Feel free to like if you liked this video, subscribe if you want to see more of my content, and click the little bell to make sure you get notified anytime I post a new video, and comment down below with anything you want to talk about. And of course, I have social media such as a Twitter and a Goodreads, which as always are both linked below. And I also have other social media sites upon request, like a second Twitter that is fandom centric, a couple of Tumblrs. I have a travel Tumblr and I have a fandom Tumblr, which you should totally go and check out if you're interested, as well as a travel Instagram if you guys are interested. And yeah, I'll come back with another video for you guys again soon. Okay, bye.